Be me, 34-year-old civil engineer working for the city's transportation department. Spend my days designing drainage systems and reviewing construction plans. Nothing glamorous. Been a feminist since college, genuinely believe in equality, pay equity, reproductive rights, all of it. Met my friend group through a local women's advocacy organization 11 years ago when I first moved to the city. We weren't internet people or activists with platforms, just regular women who gave a shit about women's issues. Sarah, the high school biology teacher who organized our monthly gatherings. Monica, who worked in HR at a manufacturing plant and always had the best analysis of workplace discrimination. Jenna, the social worker who'd seen the worst of what happens to vulnerable women. Rebecca, pharmaceutical sales rep with a sharp tongue and sharper mind. We'd been through everything together for over a decade, attended marches, volunteered at women's shelters, had countless discussions over wine about intersectionality and bodily autonomy. They were at my side when my mom died 6 years ago. I held Sarah's hand through her divorce 4 years back. We had inside jokes, shared histories, traded books constantly. Monica and I had this running thing where we'd text each other every time a man interrupted us in a meeting. Felt like these women knew me better than my own sister. Then I met David 3 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was a software developer, quiet, kind, actually listened when I talked. Not some woke performative ally type, just genuinely respected me as a person. We'd spend hours talking about our work, our dreams, stupid TV shows. He never once questioned my feminism or made me feel like I had to choose between my beliefs and our relationship. Introduced him to the friend group after 6 months of dating. They seemed to like him well enough. He didn't dominate conversations, ask thoughtful questions. Sarah told me privately she thought he seemed decent enough, which was high praise from her. 2 years into our relationship, David proposed during a weekend hiking trip. Nothing elaborate, just us at a scenic overlook, him asking if I wanted to build a life together. I said yes because I loved him and wanted that future. Felt genuinely happy, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. The first person I called was Sarah. Her response was cooler than I expected, but I chalked it up to bad timing. Maybe she was busy. Posted a simple photo of us to social media that evening. No ring shot or anything performative, just happy faces. Woke up the next morning to a 3-page text from Monica. I can't believe you're actually doing this. Marriage is a fundamentally patriarchal institution designed to transfer ownership of women from fathers to husbands. I thought you understood that. I thought you were better than this. Sat in bed staring at my phone, coffee getting cold. Tried calling her straight to voicemail. Checked the group chat we'd had going for 7 years. I'd been removed. Felt like someone kicked me in the stomach. Rebecca sent an email that afternoon, formal and cold. Your choice to participate in the institution of marriage represents a fundamental betrayal of the principles we've spent years fighting for. You're choosing patriarchal validation over the liberation of all women. I can't, in good conscience, maintain a friendship with someone who would make this choice. Please don't contact me again. Read it 5 times trying to make sense of it. My hands were shaking. Jenna's message came through Instagram DMs that evening. We've dedicated our lives to dismantling oppressive structures, and you're just walking right into the biggest one. Taking a man's name, letting your father give you away like property. You're setting back everything we've worked for. Every woman who looks up to you will think this is acceptable. I'm disappointed beyond words. Don't reach out. Except I hadn't said anything about taking David's name or my father walking me down any aisle. We hadn't even started planning anything. Tried to call Sarah, the one I'd known longest. Surely she would listen. Blocked number, sent an email explaining that I was still the same person, still believed in everything we'd fought for together, that getting married didn't erase my commitment to women's rights. No response. Showed up at our usual coffee shop the next week when I knew they'd be having book club. We'd been meeting there every 3rd Thursday for 9 years, discussing everything from bell hooks to Rebecca Solnit. They saw me walk in and Monica literally got up and walked out. Sarah looked at me with such cold contempt. You made your choice. You chose male approval and institutional validation over sisterhood. There's nothing to discuss. Jenna wouldn't even make eye contact. Rebecca stayed seated but said loud enough for me to hear, "I can't believe she actually showed her face here." The audacity. Left before I started crying in public. Spent the next 2 weeks in a fog. Kept replaying every conversation, every discussion we'd had about marriage over the years. Yes, we'd been critical of marriage as an institution. We'd talked about its history as a property transfer, about coverture laws, about how it had been used to subjugate women. But I never thought that meant individual women couldn't make individual choices. I'd always understood our feminism to be about expanding choices, not restricting them. David found me crying on the couch one night, surrounded by old photos of me and the girls at various protests and events. Tried to explain what was happening, but it sounded insane even to my own ears. Lost my entire friend group because I said yes to marrying someone who loves me. He offered to call off the engagement, said my friendships mattered. That just made me cry harder because, of course, that made it more complicated. If I called it off, would I be doing it because I genuinely didn't want marriage or because I was caving to pressure? Either way, I'd be making a choice based on their ultimatum rather than my own desires. Tried reaching out individually one more time to each of them over the next month. Sent Sarah a long letter about our 11-year friendship, specific memories, inside jokes, all the ways she'd shaped my thinking about gender and power. Mentioned the time we'd driven 8 hours to attend a reproductive rights rally, singing off key to 90s music the whole way. Talked about how she'd helped me find the language to demand a raise at work 5 years ago when I discovered I was making less than male colleagues with less experience. Reminded her that she knew me, really knew me, and knew this didn't change who I was. She sent it back unopened with return to sender written on the envelope. That's when it really hit me that this was permanent. Monica blocked me on every platform, even LinkedIn, which felt especially petty. Mutual acquaintances started avoiding me at community events. One woman I'd volunteered with at the women's shelter pulled me aside at the grocery store. Told me she'd heard what happened, and while she felt bad for me, she understood where my friends were coming from. Marriage is the bedrock of patriarchal control. By participating in it, you're giving it legitimacy. You're telling young women that it's acceptable, even desirable. You have to understand how that undermines everything. Wanted to scream that I was just living my own life, making my own choices. Isn't that what feminism was supposed to be about? But I just nodded and left. David and I got married 6 months later in a small ceremony. My family was there, his family, some coworkers, a few casual friends. The absence of Sarah, Monica, Jenna, and Rebecca was a physical presence. I'd imagined them at my wedding for years, standing beside me. Instead, I had my cousin as maid of honor, a perfectly nice person who I saw maybe twice a year. We did a ceremony that felt authentic to us. I wore a white dress because I liked how it looked, not because of any symbolism about purity. My dad didn't walk me down the aisle. We walked in together because we wanted to enter as equals. I kept my last name professionally but took David's socially because the paperwork seemed easier and I genuinely didn't care that much about the name itself. Felt like every choice was scrutinized in my own mind. Was I doing things because I wanted to or because I was trying to prove something? The wedding itself was beautiful, but I kept seeing ghosts in the empty seats. Honeymoon in Portugal was the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. Away from the city, away from the places we used to frequent together, away from the judgment. Came back to reality 2 weeks later, got a Facebook message from someone I barely knew, a friend of a friend. She'd heard what happened and wanted me to know that my former friends had been talking about me. Apparently I was being used as a cautionary tale in their circles, the woman who claimed to be a feminist but couldn't resist the lure of patriarchal approval. Felt sick reading it. 11 years of friendship reduced to a warning label. Threw myself into work for the next few months. Easier to focus on stormwater management and traffic flow than on the gaping hole in my social life. Colleague at work asked if I wanted to grab drinks after a long week. Realized I hadn't socialized outside of David in 3 months. Said yes, and hated how pathetic I felt about it. Slowly started building new friendships, but it felt like starting from scratch at 34. Other women at work who were also married, also juggling careers and personal lives. They were fine, nice even, but we didn't have that shared history. No inside jokes that spanned years, no deep theoretical discussions about power and gender. Missed those conversations more than I expected. Missed Monica's razor-sharp analysis of everyday sexism. Missed Jenna's stories from the field that put everything in perspective. Missed Rebecca's dark humor about the absurdity of it all. Missed Sarah's ability to synthesize complex ideas into clear frameworks. 1 year after the wedding, saw Sarah at a community meeting about urban development. My heart literally started racing. She saw me, made eye contact for a fraction of a second, then deliberately turned away. Spent the whole meeting acutely aware of her presence 3 rows ahead. Wanted to approach her afterward, but what would I even say? Nothing had changed. I was still married, still apparently a traitor. Drove home and cried in the driveway before going inside. David found me and just held me while I sobbed about how unfair it all was. 2 years out now, and I've mostly accepted this is permanent. None of them have reached out. I'm still blocked on all platforms, heard through the grapevine that they're all still close, still meeting regularly, still active in local feminist organizing. Sometimes I see them tagged in photos at events I used to attend with them. Hurts every single time. My feminism hasn't changed. Still believe in pay equity, reproductive rights, ending gender-based violence, dismantling systems of oppression, still vote accordingly, still donate to women's organizations, still call out sexism when I see it. But I don't have a community around it anymore. There's a local feminist book club I found online that meets monthly. Went twice and stopped going because every time someone mentioned marriage or husbands, there'd be these pointed comments. Nothing direct, just enough edge to make it clear that married women weren't really full members of the movement, felt like wearing a scarlet letter, made friends with some women from David's work social events. They're fine, we talk about normal things, but there's always this guardedness on my part. Afraid to get too close, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to invest too deeply in friendships that could evaporate. David's been endlessly patient, but I know it weighs on him too. He feels guilty, even though none of this is his fault. Told me multiple times that if he'd known this would happen, he wouldn't have proposed. But that just makes it worse because I don't regret marrying him. I regret that my friends made me choose between them and my own life choices. Still don't understand the mechanism of it. How does my individual marriage harm anyone else? How does my personal choice to legally bind myself to a partner I love perpetuate oppression? I'm not telling other women they have to get married. I'm not claiming marriage is necessary for fulfillment or validation. I'm just living my own life according to my own desires. Thought feminism was supposed to support that. Guess I was wrong about what our particular brand of feminism meant. Or maybe I was wrong about what those friendships meant. Hard to tell which loss hurts more. The friend group or the ideology I thought we shared. Been doing a lot of reading on my own, trying to reconcile my beliefs with what happened. Came across this essay about choice feminism versus structural feminism, how individual choices exist within structural constraints and can reinforce those constraints even when made freely. Could see the argument my former friends would make, that my choice to marry gives legitimacy to an oppressive institution, that personal choices aren't made in a vacuum, that we have responsibility to consider the broader implications of our actions. Sat with that for a long time. Still couldn't make it add up to justifying total abandonment. Even if they disagreed with my choice, even if they thought it was politically problematic, did that warrant cutting me off completely? 11 years of friendship, mutual support, shared struggle, erased the moment I made a choice they disagreed with. That's what bothers me most, I think. Not the disagreement itself, but the absolute nature of the rejection. No conversation, no attempt to understand my perspective, no room for complexity, just immediate, total exile. Feels like the opposite of the solidarity we used to preach. David and I have talked about having kids. Realize I'm terrified of that announcement because of what already happened. If marriage was an unforgivable betrayal, what would motherhood be? Participating in biological reproduction, taking on the most traditional female role. Can already imagine the accusations. Giving up my career for patriarchal motherhood, perpetuating gender roles, choosing the nuclear family. Hate that their voices are still in my head even after 2 years of silence. Hate that I'm preemptively defending choices I haven't even made yet. Sometimes I draft texts to Sarah in my notes app, explaining, justifying, asking for another chance. Never send them because what's the point? She made it clear who I am now is unacceptable to her. Friend from work asked me recently if I wanted to join her women's networking group. Had a full panic response about it. What if they ask about my marriage? What if they judge me? What if I invest in these friendships and lose them too? Declined and made up an excuse about being too busy. David noticed and gently pointed out, I can't let this control my life forever. He's right, but knowing that doesn't make it easier. 3 months ago, saw Rebecca at a coffee shop. Not our old one. Somewhere new. She was with someone I didn't recognize, laughing at something. Looked happy, unburdened. Clearly not losing sleep over our ended friendship the way I still was. Felt this flash of anger that surprised me with its intensity. How dare she be fine when I'm still processing this loss? But of course she's fine. She still has Sarah and Monica and Jenna. She still has her community, her ideological certainty, her sense of righteousness. I'm the one who was cut off, who lost everything. She lost one friend who betrayed the cause. Probably a story she tells to illustrate a point about how seductive patriarchy can be, left before she could see me. Told my therapist about it the next week. Yes, I'm in therapy now. This whole thing broke something in me. She asked if I thought I'd made the wrong choice. Sat with that question for the full hour. Told her I didn't think marrying David was wrong, but I wasn't sure what the right choice would have been. Staying unmarried to maintain friendships with people who would abandon me over a personal life choice. That seemed wrong too. Felt like a trap with no good exit. She suggested maybe the friendship itself was conditional in ways I hadn't wanted to see. That hurt to consider, but felt true. Real friendship should have room for disagreement, even serious ideological disagreement. Real solidarity should be more resilient than that. Been trying to build a new normal for the past year. Smaller social circle, more careful with trust, more guarded with my beliefs. Still consider myself a feminist, but don't really talk about it anymore. Feels too fraught, too loaded with potential for judgment. Easier to just keep my head down and do my job. Donate money quietly to causes I care about. Vote in every election. Try to mentor younger women engineers when I can. But that sense of community, of being part of something larger than myself, that's gone. Maybe it was always an illusion. David asked me the other night if I was happy. Told him yes, which is mostly true. Happy in my marriage, happy in my work, happy in the life we're building. But there's this grief that sits underneath everything now. Grief for friendships I thought would last forever. Grief for a version of feminism I believed in that apparently didn't include space for my choices. Grief for the person I was before all this, who trusted more easily. Not sure if that makes sense. Can be happy and grieving simultaneously. 2 years and 4 months since Sarah sent back my letter unopened. Still have it in a drawer. Can't bring myself to throw it away. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just never gotten engaged. If David and I had just stayed together indefinitely without the legal paperwork. Would they have accepted that? Or would cohabitation have been its own betrayal eventually? Suspect the goalpost would have moved regardless. When your friends love you conditionally based on ideological purity, you'll never be pure enough forever. Colleague announced her pregnancy at work last month. Watched her glow with excitement as people congratulated her. Felt that twist of anxiety about whether I'd ever let myself have that. whether I'd ever stop filtering my choices through the lens of invisible judges. That's what they took from me, really. Not just their friendship, but my ability to make choices without this constant internal tribunal. Every decision now gets examined for its political implications, exhausting way to live, but also can't seem to turn it off. Their voices became my voice, internalized and relentless. Maybe that was always the point. Control through ideology, through fear of exile. Stay in line or lose everything. Worked on me for 2 years, even after they're gone. David's sister is getting married next summer. She asked me to be a bridesmaid. Said yes, because she's lovely, and I'm genuinely happy for her. But there's this weird guilt about participating enthusiastically in someone else's wedding. Like I'm proving my former friends right about something. That I've fully embraced patriarchal institutions without question. Except I do question them, constantly, maybe too much. Just came to different conclusions than Sarah and Monica and Jenna and Rebecca wanted me to. Saw a social media post from a mutual acquaintance last week. Photo from some feminist event with all 4 of them in it. Looked like they were having a great time. 11 years of my life reduced to people I occasionally see in other people's photos. Closed the app and didn't open it again for 3 days. Sometimes I imagine running into them somewhere and having a conversation. Me explaining calmly and rationally why their response was disproportionate. Them suddenly understanding and apologizing. Us rebuilding something new. No, it's a fantasy, but can't help returning to it. Reality is, they probably never think about me at all. I was excised cleanly, and they moved on. Only person still dwelling on it is me. David suggested maybe trying to find a different feminist community, more inclusive, less dogmatic. Looked into it half-heartedly, but can't seem to commit. Scared of investing again just to face the same rejection. Scared that any feminist space will eventually demand the same purity. Scared that I'm broken now in ways that make real community impossible. Easier to just keep to myself. 3 years since the engagement now. Anniversaries of loss I track without meaning to. 3 years since Monica's essay-length text message about patriarchal institutions. 3 years since Rebecca's formal email about betraying principles. 3 years since Sarah's cold contempt at the coffee shop. 3 years since Jenna refused to make eye contact. Time hasn't made it hurt less, just made it hurt differently, less acute, more chronic. Like an old injury that aches when it rains. Started volunteering at a girls' coding workshop through work, teaching middle school girls basic engineering and programming concepts. Feels good to contribute something concrete. One of the girls asked me if I like being an engineer. Told her I love it, love solving problems, love building things that matter. She asked if it's hard being a woman in a male-dominated field. Gave her the honest answer about challenges and discrimination I've faced. But also told her it's possible, that she can do it. That she doesn't have to choose between her career and other things she might want in life. Felt like a radical statement, even though it shouldn't be. Maybe that's where I'm landing on all of this. Feminism that expands choices rather than restricts them. Even if those choices look traditional from the outside, even if those choices can be critiqued through a structural lens, still valid if they're made freely by women who understand the context. Don't know if my former friends would accept that framework. Suspect they wouldn't. Their version of feminism seemed to require a specific set of life choices. Opt out of marriage, opt out of traditional family structures, opt out of anything that could be read as compliance. Respect that as a valid feminist position. Just wish there had been room for mine too. David's parents visited last weekend. His mom pulled me aside and thanked me for making her son happy. Felt this complicated wash of emotions. Grateful for her kindness, but also aware of how that statement would be read by my former friends. Reduced to my relationship to a man, valued for my role as wife, even though she clearly meant it genuinely and kindly. Everything filtered through this lens now. Can't have a simple moment without analyzing its political implications. That's the real damage, maybe. Not the lost friendships themselves, but the way they rewired my brain. Can't unknow their framework even after they're gone. Coworker invited me to a Women in STEM networking event. Actually went this time, trying to push past my anxiety. Met some interesting women, had good conversations about workplace challenges. One woman mentioned her husband and I felt myself tense, waiting for judgment, but nobody cared. She talked about her career and her marriage like both were normal parts of her life. Because they are. Felt like I could breathe a little easier. Maybe not everyone has the same rigid requirements. Maybe there are versions of feminism with more room for complexity. Exchanged numbers with 2 women there. Baby steps toward trusting again. Got an email 2 weeks ago from someone I'd never met. Said she knew my former friend group and had heard what happened to me. Told me she'd had a similar experience after she had a baby. Cut off completely for choosing motherhood. Said she wanted to reach out because she knew how isolating it was. Cried reading her email, not because it made anything better, but because I wasn't alone in this. Someone else understood the specific pain of feminist excommunication. We met for coffee and talked for 3 hours. Her story was different in details, but same in shape. Same absolute rejection, same accusations of betrayal, same confusion and grief. Asked her if it ever stops hurting. She said no, but you get better at living with it. Not the answer I wanted, but maybe the honest one. 4 women now in my life who've been through similar experiences. We joke darkly about starting a support group. Feminists excommunicated for insufficient purity. Hasn't happened yet, but maybe it should. David asked if I wanted to host a dinner party for my birthday next month. Used to always celebrate with Sarah and Monica and Jenna and Rebecca. Elaborate potlucks where we'd cook together and laugh too loud and solve the world's problems. Told him sure we could invite some people, his friends mostly, the new women from work. It'll be fine, just different. Everything is different now. That's what I've had to accept. My life didn't end when they cut me off, but it fundamentally changed. Lost my community, lost my ideological home, lost my sense of belonging to something larger, gained clarity about what kind of friendship I actually want, one that can withstand disagreement, one that values the whole person over ideological conformity, one that practices the solidarity it preaches. Don't think I'll ever fully get over it. Those friendships shaped me, held me, meant everything to me for over a decade. You don't just move past that kind of loss. You incorporate it, carry it, let it change you. Still a feminist, still believe in women's rights and gender equality. Just more careful now about who I trust with those beliefs. More skeptical of movements that demand total allegiance. More aware of how quickly solidarity can turn to exile. More protective of my right to make my own choices even when they're imperfect. Saw Monica's car in a parking lot yesterday. Recognized the bumper stickers, same ones from years ago. Felt that familiar ache. Wondered if she ever thinks about me. Wondered if any of them have regrets. Probably not. Ideological certainty doesn't leave much room for doubt. Drove away and tried not to cry. Mostly succeeded. That's where I'm at now, 3 years later. Married to a good man, doing work I find meaningful, slowly rebuilding a social life, but carrying this wound that won't quite heal. The loss of Sarah and Monica and Jenna and Rebecca. The loss of who I was when I had them. The loss of the feminism I thought we shared. Learning to live with all of it. What choice do I have? They made their choice the exact moment I got engaged. Chose ideology over friendship, purity over complexity, condemnation over conversation. I'm still here, still figuring it out, still believing women deserve better, including better than friends who abandon you for not performing feminism correctly. Maybe that makes me a traitor, or maybe it makes me honest about the messy reality of living as a woman trying to make authentic choices in an imperfect world. Don't have all the answers anymore. Used to think I did when I had them. Now I just have questions and grief and a marriage I don't regret. Has to be enough. Learning to make it be enough.